Dear delegates, ladies, gentlemen, would you please start to take your seats, please, so we can begin the session? And will parties make sure they insert their voting card into the microphone? We need to know when we have achieved a quorum, and we can't know that until you've inserted your card. So please begin to take your seats and insert your voting card as soon as you are at your desk. Thank you. Again, a request to parties to take your seats so that we can begin. And as soon as you take your seat, please insert your voting card into the slot on the microphone so that we can check whether we've got a quorum or not. But we will begin as soon as we are quorate. Thank you. Parties, I ask you again, please take your seats. And as soon as you take your seats, insert your voting card into the slot in the microphone so that we can tell if we have a quorum or not. We intend to begin as soon as we are quorate, but we need you to be at your seats, a sufficient number of you to have inserted your voting cards. So please try and do that as soon as possible. Thank you. So parties, I ask you again, please take your seats. We're still about 8 or 9 parties short of a quorum. So take your seats and insert your voting card as soon as you have sat down, please. Again, we will start as soon as we are quorate, but it's now already 15 minutes past 9, and we have a heavy agenda. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a quorum, so we're now going to begin this session of Committee 1 with my opening remarks. So, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues and friends, it is my very great pleasure to welcome you to this, the first session of Committee 1 at CoP19. And I need to begin this session with some thanks, especially to the Secretariat, to the chairs of the Standing Plants and Animals Committees, and the committees themselves, and to all of you, the parties and observers who have contributed to preparing all the documents and proposals and supplementary information for this meeting. And of course, I also wish to thank our gracious hosts here, Panama, for their warm hospitality and for providing us with these magnificent facilities. I'm also very grateful to you for entrusting me with the management of this committee. I feel very honored to have been selected for what is, to me, both a daunting and an exciting task. No doubt it will also be an exhausting one as well. Nevertheless, I hope to repay the trust you have placed in me. This is, of course, your committee, a committee of the parties, and my job is simply to enable you to get through all the business we have in front of us in the time available, and for me to do so in a fair and impartial way, observing our agreed rules of procedure. First, it is good to see so many familiar faces here, many of whom I have not seen for some considerable time. Equally, I see many faces that I don't know. So a little bit of background about me. I have worked on CITES issues for the UK Scientific Authority for Fauna for over 22 years. I handed over that role in summer 2021. But in my time in CITES, I've attended every COP since COP11 and every Animals Committee since the 15th meeting, acting as European representative for several years of that period. Colleagues, we come here from diverse places, diverse backgrounds, and diverse viewpoints. But I think that what unites us all is that we all fundamentally want the same or similar things. We want to see healthy, viable populations of wild species, and that any uses of them for trade are sustainable and well managed, issues which are at the heart of this convention. It is also important that we also respect and recognize the livelihoods and well-being of those communities that live alongside and often depend on CITES-listed species, and indeed of those people further afield along supply chains with similar dependencies. But we often have different philosophies of how to achieve our goals. And some of the proposals and documents we're discussing will expose those differences in approach. And I know the views held are often passionate and sometimes polarized. But regardless of these differences, I am sure that we can conduct our business throughout with respect and courtesy, perhaps from time to time with humor, for the viewpoints of others. And I hope, with your cooperation, to create in this committee an atmosphere that is constructive, collaborative, and collegiate. But I don't need to remind you that we have a substantial agenda ahead of us. We have 52 proposals to amend the appendices, and now 37 working documents. And the time we have to do this is limited, less than 30 minutes per item, and that means getting through at least 6 items per session if we are to stay on track. But as we go through the agenda, I want to ensure that we hear from as many speakers as possible. So I ask a number of things of you. That those introducing a document keep their introductions as short as possible, but highlight the main points and issues on which this committee is being asked to make a recommendation. That all other delegates keep their interventions as short, concise, and clear as possible, and focused on the issue under discussion. And please refer to interventions by others if your point has already been made. Clearly at this stage, I don't intend proposing any time limits, but that may become necessary depending on the progress we make with our agenda. But perhaps thinking of a time limit yourself, 3 minutes as an example, as a guidance for interventions might be a helpful approach to consider. I will also interrupt you if it seems to me that your interventions are straying from the topic we have under consideration. And I will also ask that if any of you are likely to propose significant textual changes to any of the documents that we are considering, that you submit those in advance to me, the chair, to the secretariat, so that we are sure that we have your text correctly and that we can also provide it to the interpreters. And I do also want to give reasonable time and opportunity to observers to speak where I can. I know that many of you have knowledge and experience which is valuable to our debate, and many of you have traveled here solely for specific agenda items. However, to make the best use of time, I encourage observers to make joint interventions where you can with others who share similar perspectives. And if you take this approach, to provide a list of the observers involved in those joint interventions to the rapporteurs at the end of the session to make sure they've captured all the organizations correctly. I also ask you to arrive early for sessions to enable them to start on time. We didn't manage that today. The first morning, we only started 20 minutes after our scheduled start time. And as soon as you take your seats, please insert your voting card into the microphone so that we know we have a quorum. I will start as soon as we are quorate. I also ask you to speak slowly and clearly to enable your views to be interpreted into the other official languages of the convention. If you speak too quickly and the interpreters can't keep up, then you will not inform or influence the views of other parties. I'm very fortunate to have available to me the advice and guidance and support of the CITES Secretariat, with whom I will consult at intervals as we go through our business, along with a dedicated team of rapporteurs, interpreters, and technicians. And we will perhaps, as we go through the week, have to adapt our schedule to take account of how well we are doing, and also to avoid discussing overlapping subjects in Committee 1 and 2 at the same time. I know that many of you will want to know how I intend to handle the amendment proposals and what proposals might be introduced when, so that you can ensure you have the right people in the room. My intentions are that, as indicated in CoP19 Doc 3, now Rev 2, I believe is available, on Wednesday afternoon, after we deal with item 84.1 on standard nomenclature, we will deal with amendment proposals 48 on dipteryx, 51 on Kaya, and 45 on rhodiola, followed by their respective document on standard nomenclature. The following morning, Thursday the 17th, we will continue with proposals. I will probably begin with proposals 43 and 52 and then proceed numerically. In the afternoon of the 17th, I plan to begin consideration of fish and other commercially exploited aquatic organisms in the numerical order 37 to 42. And to conclude my intentions for this week, I aim to have discussions on proposals 4 and 5 on Friday afternoon, followed by proposal 1. Thereafter, I will probably work through the amendment proposals in numerical order. But we will confirm these timings in the daily bulletin, which I asked you to consult regularly. We did, after plenary yesterday, also have 3 more documents added to our agenda. And the timings of these can be found in document 3 as revised. But I plan to take document 87.1 on resolution conference 924 on Thursday evening, and I will take documents 44.1 and 44.2 on identification materials on Friday morning. So that really concludes my opening remarks, but I would like to begin by asking the chair of the Credentials Committee if she would like to provide us with an update of how many parties' credentials have been accepted so far. So technicians, could you give the floor to Morocco, please, and the chair of the Credentials Committee?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour tout le monde. Donc, le Maroc, prenant la parole pour la première fois, souhaite remercier les autorités du Panama pour leur accueil chaleureux. Effectivement, le comité de vérification des pouvoirs a été constitué hier après les réunions régionales et il est constitué actuellement par le Maroc comme président. Je tiens à cette occasion à remercier tous les membres pour la confiance qui m'a été accordée donc pour présider ce comité. Il est aussi constitué de la Finlande, la Chine, les États-Unis d'Amérique, le Pérou et Tonga. Le comité donc a tenu sa première réunion hier soir à 15h30 et il a examiné les lettres de pouvoir qui ont été reçues par le secrétariat. Jusqu'à hier, donc 143 parties ont été enregistrées et 126 lettres de créance ont été adoptées après examen par les membres du comité. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair of the Credentials Committee. I will now turn to the Secretariat to provide us with a brief run-through of how to work the microphones and the voting procedure, and we will also run a test vote as well so that you are all familiar with what is expected of you. So, Secretariat, you ready? Have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. I would like to give you a short presentation on how to use the microphone and the voting cards. And you see a leaflet in front of you as well. There are a couple of minor errors on the leaflet, so please do pay attention to the presentation. Presentation, please. First, I would like you to make sure that you insert your committee card into the machine as soon as you enter the room. The cards are designated for each of the rooms, so if you put a Committee 1 card in Committee 2 or vice versa, it won't work. As the chair has already mentioned, this card will actually confirm if we have quorum or not to begin the session, so please make sure that you do insert the card to make your presence known. We have also received some reports of lost cards already. We will be able to issue this to you, so if you have lost a card, please inform any member of the CITES Secretariat. However, we will not be able to issue a new card during the session, and it will only be issued for the session after that. And this is due to the fact that the technicians who will be able to issue the new card will not be available until either the lunch break or the evening break. Now, to make the request for the floor, you have a round button in front of you. Please press this once. It'll light up, and this will show on the podium screen that you are in queue for speaking. So you will be put on the queue. Please don't press it again because it'll turn off your request and it will take you off the queue. And if you push it again, you'll be at the bottom of the speaking queue. When the chair calls you to speak, the technicians will automatically turn your microphone on. So there's nothing that you need to do. You will just wait until your microphone lights up, which means you can now speak. When you're finished, please do press the button to turn your microphone off, if possible. If you forget, the technicians will be able to turn it off for you. If you do have a point of order, if you're a party and have a point of order, please do press your button to put yourself on the queue, but also wave your plaque so that we know that you're not being queued, but you have a point of order to make with immediate effect. Now, when you do come to the voting stage, please do listen to the chair carefully. The chair will announce the agenda item, what is being voted for, what does yes mean, what does no mean, and what would be the majority that we are looking for to adopt that particular issue. They will announce this. Make sure that your card is inserted. It should show on the screen whether you do have voting rights or not. And when the chair says the ballot is open now, then you'll see a button turn into yes, no, and abstain. So you have 40 seconds to push yes, no, or abstain to that particular item. You will see a timer on the screen, and you can also change if you decide that you have pressed yes by error, but you meant to say no, vice versa. You can change during the 40 seconds, but when the 40 seconds is up, you will no longer be able to vote. And I think, Chair, that's it for the explanation of how the microphone works. And if you would like to, we could also test the system now. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I think it would be useful to test the system now, and we will run a test vote for parties. So as we're approaching a voting procedure, we expect all delegates to be seated. There should be no observers in the area designated for parties. And the issue on which I'm going to ask you to vote in this test case is, do you intend to watch the World Cup during sessions of Committee 1? Be careful how you answer. So that is the vote. This vote is going to be a normal vote. And on this occasion, I have unilaterally decided that the vote of the European Union will be cast by the individual member states. We will take this as a vote on a procedural matter, and this only requires a simple majority to pass. And so I will now turn to the Secretariat to check whether, and the technicians to check whether the settings are correct and in place. I'm just waiting for a signal from the technicians. Right, parties, a reminder of the question. You can vote yes, no, or abstain.
We are about to go for the voting.
Thank you, technicians. Do you intend to watch the World Cup during Committee 1 sessions? You have 40 seconds to cast your vote, and the ballot is open now. So I can now see the vote is closed. So technicians, would you please show the result on the main screen, please? And on this occasion, it's not a proper procedural motion, of course, but it would not have passed. It is a little bit concerning how many of you are intending to watch the World Cup. This is a normal vote, so I'll ask the technicians to please show the individual votes of the parties on the screen now.
Make a note of the ones that voted yes.
So thank you, technicians. I think we can clear the screen now. Clearly, quite a lot of you voted yes, and it was not a secret ballot, so we know who you are. Please don't try and watch the World Cup here. The Wi-Fi will not be able to stand it, and has also have been configured, I believe, to prevent streaming of matches. So please don't. The Wi-Fi signal is valuable to us. I think we perhaps saw some signals from some parties that they were inserted their card, but their vote hadn't been registered. If that's the case, perhaps get in touch with the Secretariat. Right, so having done a test vote and you know how the system works, it's time to get down to some real business. We open our tasks with item 85, and the first document is document 85.1, annotations, the report of the Standing Committee, and I believe Canada are going to introduce this document. So can I give the floor to Canada, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As we take the floor for the first time in this committee, Canada wishes to thank the Government of Panama for providing these sumptuous facilities for our committee hearings. And we'd also like to thank you and congratulate you, Mr. Chair, for having taken on this responsibility. We certainly look forward to your confident navigation of this committee during the days to come. So this is CoP19, document 85.1, the report of the Standing Committee on Annotations. At its 18th meeting, the Conference of the Parties adopted Decision 16.162, Rev CoP18 on Annotations, which directed the Standing Committee to reestablish the Working Group on Annotations with terms of reference indicated in the decision. Also at COP18, the Conference of the Parties adopted Decisions 18.321 and 18.322 on annotation #15, which directed the Secretariat, inter alia, to undertake a study to assess the effects on Delbergia and Guibortia species in international trade of the exemptions contained in annotation #15 for finished musical instruments, parts, and accessories, and the conservation implications thereof. In addition, the Conference of the Parties adopted Decision 18.322, which directed the Standing Committee to consider any report by the Secretariat in accordance with Decision 18.321. At its 74th meeting, the Standing Committee endorsed recommendations presented by the Working Group on Annotations to amend annotation #1, #4, and #14, and the parenthetical annotation to Orchidaceae in annotation in Appendix 1. As these amendments affect substantive texts of the CITES appendices, they are submitted to the COP in proposal COP19, Prop 43. The Standing Committee further agreed the following proposed amendments to non-substantive text. Amend paragraph 5 of the interpretation section of the appendices by deleting the text in solid or liquid media. Amend paragraph 7 of the interpretation section of the appendices to further clarify that the whole live or dead animal or plant is always included in the listing when a species is listed in Appendix 1, 2, or 3 pursuant to the definition of specimen in Article 1, paragraph B. C, amend the guidance in paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices concerning interpretation of the term 10 kilograms per shipment. D, amend the definition of transformed wood in paragraph 8 of the interpretation section. E, amend paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices by including the definitions of wood and wood products currently located in paragraph C of Resolution Conf 1013, Rev CoP18 on implementation of the Convention for Tree Species. As the working group had not achieved consensus on all of the work directed to it in Decision 16.162, including with respect to annotations #11, #12, and #14, the Standing Committee requested the chair of the Standing Committee to work with the working group chair and the Secretariat to revise Decision 16.162, deleting those directives that have been accomplished, and to submit a revised decision to COP19, proposing its adoption by the Conference of the Parties. The revised decision is presented in Annex 5 to the present document. Concerning implementation of decisions 18.321 and 18.322 on annotation #15, at SC 74, the Standing Committee considered a report by the Secretariat that provided an update on the progress in its implementation of decisions 18.321 and 18.322. The Secretariat further highlighted the progress made by the Plants Committee at PC 25, which could serve as a starting point for the study. The committee agreed to propose to COP19 the renewal of decisions 18.321 and 18.322 on annotation #15 as presented in Annex 6 to the present document. The Conference of the Parties is invited to adopt the proposed amendment to paragraph 5 contained in Annex 1 to the present document, the proposed amendments to paragraph 7 of the interpretation section of the appendices contained in Annex 2, the proposed amendments to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices providing guidance for the interpretation of 10 kilograms per shipment, the proposed amendments to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices regarding the definition of transformed wood contained in Annex 4, the proposed revision of Docs 16.162 contained in Annex 5 of the present document, the proposed amendments to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices to include the definitions of wood and wood products, and the proposed revisions of Decision 18.321 and 18.322 contained in Annex 6 of the document. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Canada, for that helpful introduction, and thank you also to the working group that has put so much time into this. I intend to go through each of those recommendations and their associated annexes, if there is one, in turn to make our debate more manageable. So the first recommendation in paragraph 10A relates to Annex 1. And we've heard from the proposal and also from the comments of the Secretariat that Annex 1 is intrinsically linked to Proposal 43. And it is Proposal 43 that provides a substantive and legally binding change to the appendices. In other words, it does not make sense to discuss this annex in advance of the committee making a recommendation on Proposal 42. So what I propose to you, colleagues, is that we adjourn discussion of Annex 1 of this document and recommendation paragraph 10A until immediately afterwards, after we discuss Proposal 43. So that is my suggestion to you as a way forward. Are there any comments or objections to that way forward? I see a flag being waved there. Is that France? I can't. No. France, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous avons des problèmes de son pour la traduction en français depuis environ 2 minutes.
Thank you, France. I see Senegal, you have also got your flag raised. Is that a similar issue, Senegal?
Oui, c'est le même problème, la transmission.
Okay, thank you. The interpreters are looking into that, and we will have to just suspend discussions briefly while we work out what is happening. Okay, I think we have a thumbs up now, but perhaps I need to go back a little and say what I have just said about the recommendation in paragraph 10A and linked to Annex 1. And my suggested way forward on this annex is that because it is intrinsically linked to Proposal 43, and it is Proposal 43 that provides a substantive and legally binding amendment to the appendices, it does not make sense to have a discussion or come to any position on Annex 1 in advance of discussing Proposal 43, which I aim to do first thing on Thursday morning. So with your agreement, I would propose to adjourn discussions on Annex 1 and Recommendation 10A until immediately after Proposal 43. So if there are any objections to that or any comments, then please request the floor. But if I don't see any, I'll assume you're all content with that and move on. I don't see any requests from the floor from parties and none from observers either. Right, so we conclude that we have adjourned a discussion on 10A and the associated annex. I now invite discussions on paragraph 10B, the proposed amendments to paragraph 7 of the interpretation section of the appendices contained in Annex 2. Again, this recommendation has been subject to a lot of discussions already, and I will take silence as consent. But if parties wish to raise the floor, then raise their flag to speak, then the floor is open. I see no requests from the floor from parties. Are there any from observers? I see none. So in that case, the recommendation in 10B and Annex 2, we take as we will adopt that as a recommendation to plenary. Now move on to paragraph 10C and the proposed amendments to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices, providing guidance on the interpretation of the term 10 kilos per shipment contained in Annex 3. As before, I will take silence as consent, but the floor is open for parties to comment if they wish. I see a request from the United Kingdom. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As it is the first time the United Kingdom is taking the floor, I'd like to take the opportunity to wish you, Vin, the very best for your chairmanship and express our thanks to the government of Panamania for hosting this COP, for last night's wonderful reception, and for the warm welcome we've received from your amazing country. We'd also like to thank the interpreters. The United Kingdom wishes to thank the Chair and the members of the Annotations Working Group for the progress they've made, and we fully support its continued work. We would like to note that there is a minor grammatical error in Annex 3, which we have sent to the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. So that's a slight grammatical change in Annex 2, yes? Yes. No, 3? 3, sorry, okay, thank you. Right, that was a request from parties. Are there any requests from observers? I don't see any, and we can therefore move. Oh, United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time the United States of America is addressing Committee 1, we'd like to congratulate the Chair and Vice Chair on your election and look forward to productive meetings the next 2 weeks. With the Chair's indulgence, I'll call on my colleague to offer comments on this item.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the comments from our colleague from the United Kingdom, we appreciate that, that the amendments to Annex 3 may in fact be merely grammatical, but it would be helpful if we were able to hear what they were so that we could take them under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, United States, and a good point. So I think I will turn to United Kingdom and ask you to read out your suggested amendment to the annex. So United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I will read the hashtag 15. For the term 10 kilogram per shipment, the 10 kilograms should be interpreted as referring to the weight of wood, and the error is an additional word of. Each individual annotated species of genus Delbergia and Cubotia present in the items in the shipment. The minor error is a second word of, which is required in the first sentence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom, and you are correct. There is a missing of there in the English version, so I'm sure, hope people are content with that. So, with no further requests from the floor and no requests from observers, we will move on to the proposed amendments in paragraph 10D, the proposed amendments to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices regarding the definition of transformed wood contained in Annex 4. Again, I will take silence as consent, but the floor is open for parties to comment if they wish. I see no request for the floor from parties. Are there any comments from observers? I don't see any there, so we will also move on, and we can adopt that as a recommendation from this committee to plenary. We now move on to paragraph 10E and the proposed revision of decision 16.162 Rev CoP 18 contained in Annex 5. And I note here the Secretariat comments have recommended adoption, but as a new set of decisions rather than an amended version of 16.162. So I open the floor for comments and whether anybody has observations on the Secretariat comments. So parties, you... If there are no United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the Secretariat's recommendation that the decision, which is currently 16.162, Rev CoP 18, be renumbered as a decision of the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. While we don't feel strongly about it, we think that there is merit in maintaining the decision as a decision of the 16th meeting of the Conference of the Parties in order to signal that, that this is ongoing discussion that has been undergoing for several COPs. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Are there any other comments from parties on that? I don't see any requests from the floor. Any requests from observers? In that case, with relation to paragraph 10E and Annex 5, we will recommend adoption of the revised draft decisions, but retain the original numbering. Moving on to paragraph 10F, the proposed additions to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices to include definitions of wood and wood products currently located in paragraph C of Res Conc 1013. Again, I will take silence as agreement. Are there any requests for the floor from parties? I see Republic of Korea, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Korean delegation has a concern regarding this recommendation that the definition of wood and wood products currently located in paragraph C of Resolution COP 10.13 CoP18 is out of date. Because in accordance with the CITES Code Nomenclature 2022 edition by WCO, that its footnote should be updated. We submitted its chapter 44 on wood and wood products as an information document this morning. We are sorry for the late submission. In particular, HS code called 44.12.13, 40 and 44.12.14, and 12.22, which are currently included in the definition of plywood in CITES resolution do not exist in WCO's nomenclature. Besides, other HS codes are also updated in WCO's nomenclature. Finally, we basically agree with the additions to paragraph 8 of the interpretation section of the appendices recommended as subgraph F in paragraph 10, but further could be needed for avoiding future confusion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Korea, for expressing those concerns. Are there any further requests from the floor, from parties, or any reaction to the comments from Korea? I don't see any. I will maybe perhaps, well, I'll see if there are any requests from observers. Again, I don't see any. If you just give me a moment to consult with my colleagues. Thank you. So, Republic of Korea, could you just possibly go through your proposed changes again so that we can capture exactly what you intended to achieve, and also we can then consider the implications. So, can we give the floor to the Republic of Korea?
We think it is a very complex work to revise our resolution. So, if possible, we propose new proposal draft for standing annotation working group to this work.
Thank you, Korea. Republic of Korea. United States, you wish to speak? You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. If we understood the intervention from our colleagues correctly, it seems as though perhaps there is that there is some concern about one of the definitions, that perhaps it is out of date with regard to the HTS references now. And if we're correct, if that's in fact the case, perhaps revisiting this definition could be an additional element in the decision directed to the Standing Committee for the next intersessional period. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, United States, and I think that would seem like a good way forward. I don't know if Canada wish to respond from as chair of the working group. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that essentially the definitions as they exist in Resolution 1013 were adopted as definitions, but I would agree that it would be useful to take up that consideration in the terms of reference of the working group of annotations should it be reformulated in future. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Canada. We'll just have a brief consultation here. So thank you, colleagues, and thank you for your patience. We're just trying to find the best way forward to deal with this recommendation and the comments from the Republic of Korea and the United States and also Canada. And perhaps the best way forward might be to insert into Annex 5, into the terms of reference for the working group. I know we've just discussed that. A task that could be to, as a new paragraph, perhaps a new paragraph C, to review and update the definitions of wood and wood products currently located in paragraph C of Resolution Conference 1013, Rev. CoP19, on the implementation of the Convention for Tree Species for Logs, Sawnwood, veneer sheets, and plywood. And with that suggested amendment to the terms of reference in Annex 5, we would then not adopt the current recommendation, which is in paragraph 10F. Would you, as a committee, be content with that as a way forward? Floor is open for parties. I will assume that we can move forward with that unless there's any objection. I don't see any from parties. Are there any observers who wish to take the floor? I don't see any, so I hope that satisfies the concerns from Republic of Korea. Thank you. We'll now move on to paragraph 10G, which relates to the proposed revisions of decisions 18.321 and 18.322 contained in Annex 6. As before, the Secretariat had recommended adoption, but as a new set of decisions rather than an amended version. But again, given the earlier comments from the United States and a general agreement there, perhaps these are better left in their original numbering with Rev CoP19 added. So are there any comments from parties? I see no request from the floor. I invite observers for any comments. And I don't see any requests. So to sum up on document 85.1, we have agreed to defer discussions, to adjourn discussions on the recommendation in paragraph 10A. We have adopted the amendments in paragraphs 10B, 10C, 10D, 10E, with the additional paragraph added to the terms of reference. For the annotations working group, we have not adopted as a recommendation paragraph 10F, and we have adopted 10G. As we are continuing with the original numbering of the relevant decisions in Annexes 6 and 5, we don't have any decisions to delete. So I think that concludes our discussions for now on document 85.1, recognizing that we need to return to that in a few days' time. So moving on, we get to item 85.2, annotations and information system for trade in specimens of CITES listed tree species. And I invite the Secretariat to introduce this document. You have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Introduzco el breve documento 85.2 elaborado por el Comité Permanente y la Secretaría. En su pasada reunión, la Conferencia de las Partes dirigió al Comité Permanente la decisión 18.317 para que explorara la viabilidad de desarrollar un sistema de información y los requisitos para ello con la finalidad de procesar los datos comerciales asociados con las transacciones de especies maderables incluidas en los apéndices de las CITES, y la Secretaría presentó a la 74 reunión del Comité Permanente dichos requisitos iniciales para el desarrollo de un sistema de información con la finalidad de procesar los datos comerciales asociados con las transacciones de dichos especímenes, que permita dos cosas: un examen y un análisis de tres aspectos. Primero, la magnitud del comercio de especies arbóreas incluidas en los apéndices en términos de especímenes, volúmenes y valores, las pautas y tendencias de ese comercio y, por último, los beneficios de conservación y socioeconómicos de ese comercio. Los productos esperados de tal sistema de información incluirían un análisis detallado del comercio internacional de las especies arbóreas incluidas en los apéndices de las CITES, para que sea examinado por las partes en cada reunión de la COP. La presentación gráfica interactiva basada en datos de los resultados de este análisis, incluyendo imágenes, gráficos e infografías, y la publicación y presentación de un informe sobre el comercio de especies arbóreas a la conferencia de las partes. En sus deliberaciones, el Comité Permanente apoyó la renovación de la decisión sobre el examen del sistema de información y el proyecto de decisión para iniciar un estudio de viabilidad. Asimismo, consideró la posibilidad de utilizar los códigos de tarifas del sistema armonizado para el sistema de información. Sobre este tema, las partes expresaron diferentes posiciones que están brevemente reseñadas en el presente documento. Señor presidente, el anexo 1 del documento somete a consideración del Comité 1 la renovación de la decisión 18.317 y la adopción de una nueva decisión dirigida a la Secretaría para que, sujeta a la disponibilidad de financiación externa, encargue un estudio para explorar la viabilidad y los requisitos para desarrollar un sistema de información como se propone y facilitar sus conclusiones y recomendaciones al Comité Permanente. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Secretariat. And with that introduction, I invite observations by parties on Annex 1 of Document 85.2. Again, we will take silence as consent, and I see Senegal asking for the floor, followed by the European Union. So Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais tout d'abord, à l'entente de mes propos, vous féliciter et vous souhaiter une bonne tenue de votre mission, parce que vous avez été mon professeur en 2016 au Master de la CITES. C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer et de continuer à échanger sur ces thématiques que vous nous avez formées. Alors, le Sénégal dit qu'on a écouté la présentation du secrétariat, mais nous pensons qu'une analyse des données dans le commerce suffirait en lieu et place de commanditer une étude qui coûterait de l'argent encore au secrétariat. Voilà, c'est une question de priorisation et d'opportunité. Nous pensons qu'une analyse assez sereine des données qui sont obtenues dans la base de données suffirait que de commanditer une étude qui prendrait beaucoup de ressources financières. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. So you're broadly in favor of the decisions, but you think there are ways of doing it more economically, if I heard correctly. European Union, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of the EU and its member states, we'd like to thank the Standing Committee and the Secretariat for preparing the document, and particularly congratulate you on the appointment of Chair to this meeting, and thank Panama for hosting the meeting. We support the proposed renewal of Decision 18317, Rev CoP19, and the adoption of the new draft decision presented in Annex 1. We would like to highlight the importance of identification and building on existing work. We support the suggestion of the Secretariat to consult the ITTO for guidance. However, duplication of work should be avoided. We welcome the very long-term vision for cooperation between the World Customs Organization and CITES to better reflect CITES timber trade in HS codes. We would particularly welcome the initiative to potentially add a HS code for Dalbergia timber. We support the request to the WCO to revise the HS codes so the relevant products of CITES listed tree species are recorded as mentioned in paragraph 5. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Any further requests from the floor from parties? If not, I will open the floor to observers. Oh, sorry, Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Quería aprovechar para felicitarlo por su designación a cargo del Comité 1 y felicitar a la Secretaría y al Comité Permanente por elaborar este documento. Argentina no está de acuerdo con este documento, ya que se incluye información sobre valores y los beneficios socioeconómicos y de conservación de dicho comercio, y se podría crear a nuestro entender, se podría crear una impresión desequilibrada de los efectos positivos frente a los negativos del comercio. Gracias.
Thank you, Argentina. Any other requests from the floor, from parties or observers? If you just give me one moment to consult. Thank you, colleagues, for your patience, and thank you for your helpful comments. What I heard was that there was no disagreement with the content of the decisions as such, but several of you made comments on how these studies and this work might progress more effectively in future. I think maybe it is for this committee to adopt these decisions, but to make sure that the comments which will be captured in the summary note are taken into account in the future implementation of these decisions. But I see a request from the United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate your suggestion with regard to the way forward. We also think that perhaps the concerns raised could be resolved by adding an additional element to the decision that would direct the Standing Committee in consultation with the Plants Committee to develop terms of reference for such an information system. So in addition to exploring the feasibility of and requirements for developing such a system, to have the committee work with the Plants Committee to contemplate the outputs from such a system and prepare terms of reference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your suggestion, United States. Do you actually have some wording that you want to propose? Because that would presumably need also a task directed to the Plants Committee as well. United States, you have the floor. Sorry.
Thank you. We don't have wording, but perhaps it could simply be an additional element to Decision 18.317, Rev CoP19, which directs the Standing Committee in consultation with the Plants Committee to develop terms of reference for this exercise or for the development of an information system. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, United States. We'll just have a look at the wording and see if we can come up with something that might capture your intent there. So, one moment, please, colleagues. Okay, thank you for your patience again. We're just trying to find a form of words that will capture the intent of the suggestions from the United States. So we now suggest that in Annex 1, the first decision, 18.317 Rev CoP19, be directed to the Standing Committee and the Plants Committee. And it would now read, the Standing Committee, comma, in consultation with the Plants Committee, comma, shall explore the feasibility and requirements for developing an information system, comma, subject to agreed terms of reference, comma, for the purpose of processing trade data associated with the transactions, and then continuing as before. So I see an okay from the United States. Are the rest of parties content with that amendment? I don't see any requests from the floor. I'll give observers the opportunity to comment if they wish. I see no requests. So with those suggested amendments to 18.317 Rev CoP19, we conclude our discussions on this document and adopt it as a recommendation to plenary. Thank you. So we now move on to our next document on annotations, which is document 85.3 on an informal review mechanism of existing and proposed annotations. And again, I invite the Secretariat to introduce this document. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Presidente. Introduzco el documento 85.3, presentado por la Presidencia del Comité Permanente en consultación con la Secretaría. En su 18ª reunión, la Conferencia de las Partes adoptó decisiones relativas al desarrollo de un mecanismo de examen de las anotaciones como parte de las decisiones sobre anotaciones, de la siguiente manera. El Comité Permanente, en colaboración con los comités de fauna y flora, debería determinar los requisitos para el desarrollo y adopción por la Conferencia de las Partes de A, un mecanismo para emprender una revisión periódica de las anotaciones vigentes, y B, un mecanismo para un examen a priori de las anotaciones propuestas a la consideración de las reuniones de la Conferencia de las Partes, a fin de apoyar la aplicación coherente de las orientaciones sobre las anotaciones prevista en la resolución Conferencia 11.21 Rev COP18. En su 74ª reunión, el Comité Permanente examinó la aplicación de las decisiones sobre la base de un informe presentado por la Secretaría. En ese informe, la Secretaría sugirió que el Comité Permanente considerara la posibilidad de proponer a la Conferencia de las Partes el establecimiento de un único mecanismo para examinar las anotaciones existentes y las anotaciones propuestas. La Secretaría sugirió que las dos funciones propuestas en la decisión 18.316 se integraran dentro de un único mecanismo que permitiera realizar tanto un examen de las anotaciones existentes como un examen a priori de las anotaciones que se propongan a la consideración de las reuniones de la Conferencia de las Partes. La Secretaría indicó que el objetivo de ese mecanismo informal de examen sería garantizar la coherencia de las anotaciones y armonizar su interpretación y aplicación. En sus deliberaciones, el Comité Permanente apoyó los objetivos generales del documento, pero expresó su preocupación en relación con varios aspectos de un mecanismo de examen de las anotaciones y sugirió que se siguiera examinando esta cuestión durante el siguiente periodo entre sesiones. Las preocupaciones expresadas por el comité incluían, entre otras cosas, interrogantes sobre el proceso de examen propuesto, la situación dentro de la estructura de las CITES del panel propuesto y las implicaciones jurídicas de dicho panel y su composición. El Comité Permanente invitó a la Secretaría a tomar nota de esas preocupaciones y comentarios expresados durante el debate y a presentar a la COP19 dos proyectos de decisión. Uno en el que se encargue a la Secretaría que prepare una propuesta para un mecanismo informal de asesoramiento sobre las anotaciones y otro en el que se encargue al Comité Permanente que evalúe la propuesta de la Secretaría, haga recomendaciones a la 20ª reunión de la Conferencia de las Partes. Al preparar los proyectos de decisión, la Presidencia y la Secretaría, la Presidencia del Comité Permanente y la Secretaría constataron que sería beneficioso para el Comité contar también con las opiniones del Grupo de Trabajo sobre Anotaciones establecido tal como lo vienen de acordar en el ítem anterior, de conformidad con la decisión 16.162 revisada, COP19, y recomiendan que se invite a ese grupo de trabajo a proporcionar sus opiniones sobre la propuesta preparada para la consideración del Comité Permanente. De conformidad con lo anterior, la Presidencia del Comité Permanente y la Secretaría redactaron los proyectos de decisión sobre la viabilidad y los requisitos para desarrollar un mecanismo de examen informal de las anotaciones vigentes y propuestas que figuran en el anexo 1 del presente documento para su consideración. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I now open the floor and invite comments from parties whether you are content with the proposed draft decisions contained in Annex 1. So I see the United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports adoption of the draft decisions included in this document. We also support the note in paragraph 5 of the document that it would be beneficial for the Standing Committee to have the insights of the Annotations Working Group on any proposal prepared by the Secretariat. Additionally, we believe that the Standing Committee's review called for in draft decision 19.BB should be conducted in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees. And we suggest the following amendment to that draft decision, such that it would read 19.BB, the Standing Committee, comma, in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees, comma, shall evaluate, and there are no additional edits to the remainder of that draft decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. We have that proposed revision. Are there any other comments from parties? I don't see any other requests from the floor. Any requests from observers? Okay, I don't see any requests either. Just give me a brief moment. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, United States, for your intervention. Just for consistency in the approach we took in document 85.2, I think new 19BB should now be directed to the Standing Committee, Animals Committee, and Plants Committee. And then the rest of your amendments stay as they are, and without any further comments, I think we can agree that these draft decisions are proposed as our recommendation to plenary. If we are adopting these draft decisions, then I think we simultaneously need to delete decisions 18.316, 318, and 319 and 320. Is that correct? Yes. So those decisions are recommended for deletion, and with that, I think we can conclude discussions on document 85.3 and also on annotations for this morning. We now move on to our next document, which is document 83, which is identifying species at risk of extinction for CITES parties. This document has been submitted by the Gambia, Liberia, Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal. And I would invite one of the proponents to introduce this document to the committee. So Nigeria, you now have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, because this is the first time I'm addressing, or Nigeria is addressing, or is talking at this committee. I want to congratulate you and also wish you the best. CoP19.83 was submitted by Gambia, Liberia, Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal in response to the global extinction crisis. West Africa's diverse ecosystem, ranging from dry savannas to mangrove swamps, coastal estuaries, and most tropical broadleaf forests, are of international conservation importance. West Africa is home to the Guinea Forest Hotspot, which extends from Guinea through Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, and into Cameroon. It also includes the islands of Sao Tome and Principe, and also Equatorial Guinea, with an estimated 9,000 vascular plants, 917 birds, 416 mammals, and 107 reptiles. The hotspot has been recognized as one of the 5 richest and most threatened areas of flora and fauna in the planet. The Guinea forests are renowned for their diversity of mammals, particularly primates, and the high level of species endemism. West Africa is also important in terms of fresh water and marine biodiversity. The region has 6 major river systems, which are a fundamental part of the region's ecosystems, and the marine areas are fed by 2 major currents, the Guinea Current and the Canary Current, the latter of which sustained one of the richest marine ecosystems in the world. Chair, West Africa is extremely concerned about the extinction crisis, which is heavily impacting upon these globally important species and ecosystems. These extraordinary and unique environments have been subject to catastrophic levels of biodiversity loss, which has been caused in part due to the illegal trade in wild fauna and flora. The crisis is not only affecting West Africa. The IBEL's Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services found that the world is facing an extinction crisis with up to 1 million species threatened with extinction, many within decades. The report found that the second leading driver, first for marine species, of this unprecedented decline in biodiversity is a direct exploitation of wild plants and animals, which includes commercial trade. Mr. Chair, ECOWAS countries are firmly of the opinion that CITES needs to be bolder in its response to this extinction crisis. Every few years, we come to the COP and make important decisions about listing species on the CITES appendices. However, ECOWAS parties are concerned that large numbers of critically endangered or endangered species that may be affected by trade remain ignored by CITES due to a lack of accessible information or capacity. This is why ECOWAS submitted a letter to Standing Committee 74, which was posted as SC74 Info 19, which expressed our deep concern about the present scale of the extinction crisis and the rate of species decline, aggravated by unregulated wildlife trade and wildlife trafficking. This is also why ECOWAS have submitted COP19 Info 30, an ECOWAS regional declaration on a robust response to the extinction crisis at COP19, which calls for CITES to be ambitious in its response to the extinction crisis and support West Africa's effort at COP19 to protect species threatened by international trade. Mr. Chair, COP19 Doc 83 is an extension of this process. This document proposes that CITES adopt a resolution on identifying species at risk of extinction for CITES parties. This resolution will result in the establishment of a database indicating the CITES status of all species identified as critically endangered or vulnerable in the IUCN list, red list, so that parties may assess whether such species are or may be affected by international trade. This will ensure that all species potentially warranting CITES protection or enhanced CITES protection are identified for parties. Doc 83 further proposes a number of decisions that direct the Standing Committee in collaboration with the Animals and Plants Committee to develop a procedure for providing technical support to parties in the preparation of listing proposal, emanating from the resolution on identifying species at risk of extinction, and also to establish a working group to review the proposed procedure. Doc 83 will also establish a process whereby parties will request it could receive support for the preparation of listing proposal, as we have seen at previous meetings as well as this meeting. Some parties do not have the resources or capacity to focus on the production of full listing proposals, which require a lot of technical expertise and input. The truth is that we may be falling threatened species due to this lack of capacity. Finally, Mr. Chair, we would like to remind parties of the CITES Strategic Vision 2021-2030, which states by 2030, all international trade in wild fauna and flora is legal and sustainable, consistent, and the long-term conservation of species, and thereby contributing to the holding biodiversity laws, to ensuring its sustainable use, and to achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Mr. Chair, if CITES is to meet its strategic vision, it is essential that it takes action. The rate of species declines across the globe are increasingly outpacing efforts made by CITES. Nigeria hopes that today we can all make a decision to support the proposal in Document 83 to demonstrate that CITES is taking this crisis seriously and is committed to species protection. I thank you for your time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nigeria, and for that comprehensive introduction to the document. And you're asking the committee really to consider and adopt the draft resolution in Annex 1 and the draft decisions in Annex 2. I had meant to call your attention before your introduction to the comments of the Secretariat that are not particularly supportive of the proposed resolution or decisions, noting that the criteria for listing in Conference Resolution 924 and the red list criteria are not the same and have different objectives, that they stand willing and able to provide technical advice if required, and many parties are and do make listing proposals without any clear problems being flagged. But however, so my apologies for not addressing those already, but I see already that some of your co-proponents have requested the floor. So I do now open the floor for parties to comment. I'll give the floor to Senegal, followed by Niger. As you are sort of co-proponents, I would ask you to keep your comments brief, but perhaps you might want to reflect on the comments of the Secretariat. So, Senegal, you have the floor. Thank you.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Donc, par rapport aux commentaires que vous venez d'énumérer tout à l'heure, donc je pense actuellement nous sommes dans une situation où il faudra absolument venir en aide les espèces inscrites aux incres de la CITES et qui sont menacées. Je pense que c'est une demande qui est là face aux pressions donc, que nous subissons au niveau de la sous-région d'une manière générale. Donc nous invitons vraiment à se pencher très profondément sur les propositions qui sont contenues dans cette proposition. Voilà, merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Senegal, and I'll give the floor to Niger, followed by Benin.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je voulais, à la suite de mes collègues du Nigeria et du Sénégal, donc vous remercier avant de commencer, pour vous féliciter pour votre élection à cette présidence du Comité 1. Monsieur le Président, le Niger pense que la CITES doit être beaucoup plus stratégique et ambitieuse dans notre réponse collective à la crise mondiale de la biodiversité. Nous devons penser au présent et à l'avenir. Nous devons penser aux espèces qui ne sont pas couvertes par la CITES, au lieu de se limiter seulement aux espèces qui ont déjà attiré notre attention. Monsieur le Président, nous sommes préoccupés par le fait que les espèces en danger critique d'extinction qui remplissent les critères CITES ne bénéficient pas de la protection adéquate malgré leur rôle important dans l'écosystème. Monsieur le Président, nous devons veiller à promouvoir la vision stratégique de la CITES qui exige que tout le commerce international des espèces de faune et de flore sauvages soit légal et durable. Si nous ne savons même pas quelles espèces ont besoin de protection, nous n'avons aucune chance de réaliser cette vision. C'est pour cela qu'il est important de créer une base de données et des mécanismes pour soutenir la création des propositions d'inscription est une étape cruciale dans la bonne direction et j'espère que j'ai confiance que les autres parties nous soutiendront dans cette entreprise. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Niger. I now give the floor to Benin, followed by Gabon, then Costa Rica.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Étant donné que c'est la première fois que le Bénin prend la parole, donc je voudrais donc prêter ma voix à celle des autorités du Bénin pour vous féliciter pour votre nomination et une fois encore remercier le gouvernement du Panama pour cette belle organisation qui est mise en place dans le cadre de cette session. Monsieur le Président, le Bénin remercie le Nigeria et les co-auteurs pour avoir présenté le document 83 qui répond à une préoccupation urgente de notre sous-région qui a été exprimée dans la lettre que la CEDEAO a adressée au comité permanent et qui se reflète encore dans ce document COP19 F83. Nous pensons qu'il est grand temps d'agir pour que la CITES puisse jouer un rôle dans la préservation immédiate des extinctions causées par les hommes. La soumission de ce document illustre l'urgence de notre appel à plus d'un titre dans la réponse de la CITES à la crise de l'extinction. Le Bénin est également conscient des préoccupations qui ont été soulevées, notamment dans la duplication des initiatives existantes. Cependant, nous voudrons profiter de cette tribune pour rappeler aux parties qu'il n'existe actuellement aucun mécanisme ou base de données qui contiennent des informations sur toutes les espèces menacées d'extinction, pour lesquelles le commerce est potentiellement un facteur d'extinction. Il n'existe pas non plus actuellement de mécanisme pour soutenir des pays comme le Bénin pour élaborer des propositions d'inscription des espèces aux annexes. Monsieur le Président, l'objectif des propositions faites dans le document est de soutenir les pays qui souhaitent répondre à la crise de l'extinction de manière adéquate. Sur cette base, nous savons que le Bénin n'a pas la capacité, comme d'autres pays d'ailleurs, n'ont pas la capacité de passer du temps à entreprendre des enquêtes approfondies sur les espèces qui pourraient répondre aux critères de la CITES. Et nous n'avons pas non plus la capacité dans nos États d'élaborer toutes les propositions requises pour les espèces qui font l'objet de commerce et qui sont susceptibles de remplir les critères d'inscription aux annexes de la CITES. La résolution et les décisions contenues dans le document soumis à l'appréciation fourniraient un mécanisme permettant à des pays comme le mien, comme le Bénin, de nous aider à garantir que toutes les espèces qui remplissent les critères de la résolution COP 9.24 reçoivent la protection qu'elles méritent. C'est un aspect essentiel de soutien technique à apporter aux parties pour renforcer le rôle de la CITES et la mise en œuvre adéquate de cette convention au niveau de nos États. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. And I think I then said that I would give the floor to Gabon, followed by Costa Rica. So, Gabon, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est la première fois que le Gabon prend la parole au sein de ce comité. Aussi, nous réitérons nos remerciements au pays hôte pour son accueil. Nous vous félicitons, Monsieur le Président, à votre élection pour la présidence de ce comité. Monsieur le Président, il convient de saluer le soutien que l'on peut apporter aux parties qui ont pour ambition de protéger des espèces contre le commerce international non durable. Les parties qui n'ont pas la capacité de développer des propositions d'inscription d'espèces aux annexes de la CITES ou de conduire des activités de recherche sur des espèces qui nécessitent une protection peuvent toutefois apporter des contributions significatives, pertinentes, dans le cadre des amendements des annexes de la CITES. Souvenons-nous de ce qui a été dit par le représentant du gouvernement du Panama et du Programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement lors de la cérémonie d'ouverture de cette conférence. La CITES doit agir maintenant et contribuer à la protection de notre milieu naturel. Soyons donc ambitieux en conciliant protection de la biodiversité et commerce international en adoptant les projets de résolution et de décision du document COP19 DOC 83 visant à identifier des espèces menacées d'extinction. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. The next speaker on my list is Costa Rica, followed by Peru. So, Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Como es la primera vez que intervenimos en su comité, felicitarlo por la elección y desearle lo mejor en el liderazgo de este comité y llegar a buen puerto juntos. Felicitamos a Gambia, Liberia, Níger, Nigeria y Senegal por la propuesta. Definitivamente el tema de la extinción es una situación preocupante para todo el mundo. La identificación de las especies en peligro de extinción para las partes en CITES es una necesidad urgente. Necesitamos el acompañamiento de la Secretaría de CITES y juntos trabajar en este proceso que es crítico para la identificación de las especies que están en peligro de extinción. Costa Rica apoya este documento y felicita reiteradamente a los que hicieron la propuesta. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Costa Rica. Next speaker on my list is Peru, which will be followed by the European Union. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Dado que es la primera vez que el Perú interviene, deseamos agradecer al Gobierno de Panamá y a la Secretaría CITES por la magnífica organización y hospitalidad recibida. Asimismo, felicitarle por su designación y le deseamos los mejores éxitos en la conducción del Comité 1. El Perú reconoce que contar con una base de datos actualizada puede ser útil como una referencia para que países para que más países puedan contar con insumos para plantear, por ejemplo, propuestas de enmienda, ¿no? Sin embargo, es conveniente resaltar que los criterios de categorización de la IUCN no contemplan al comercio internacional como un aspecto central. Asimismo, es pertinente indicar que muchas especies amenazadas que están actualmente listadas en la IUCN no tienen comercio internacional y su inclusión se debe a diferentes causas. El incrementar las especies en los apéndices de las CITES bajo estos nuevos criterios propuestos podrían disipar los esfuerzos que hacemos las partes en el marco de las CITES, que se debe centrar principalmente en evitar que el comercio internacional sea una causa para la extinción de las especies, por lo cual el Perú no apoya este documento. Gracias.
Thank you, Peru. And the next speaker on my list is the European Union, followed by the United Kingdom. So, EU, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We very much appreciate efforts by the proponents to protect their rich biodiversity. In line with the assessment by the Secretariat, we, however, do not think that establishing a new database is necessary or advisable. The existing IUCN Red List is an easily accessible and valuable source of information that, in conjunction with trade data and other relevant information, can be used to assess whether a species should be proposed for listing under CITES. Moreover, we agree with the Secretariat assessment that the additional tasks proposed would add additional burden on the animals and plant committees and might interfere with their other work. Finally, we acknowledge that the process for listing species is complex and some parties might require technical support to be able to prepare and submit proposals. We call on the parties concerned to seek assistance from the Secretariat and use the tools and programs that are already available. Unfortunately, we cannot support this proposal. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. Now give the floor to the United Kingdom, followed by Cameroon.
The United Kingdom thanks the Gambia, Liberia, Niger, Nigeria and Senegal for preparing this document. We agree that a mechanism to share information of species assessed as threatened by IUCN Red List assessments and likely to be affected by all international trade would be useful for all parties. We are aware that there have been academic studies looking at how this could work, and we would welcome hearing about these in other interventions in this session. We are concerned the resolution might be an unnecessary and unfunded pressure on Secretariat resources. However, as identified by the proponents, this is important work. We would suggest that the draft decisions are adopted with some minor amendments to progress this work intercessionally and provide technical support to parties in developing listing proposals. In decision 19.AA, we would suggest striking out the text after proposals emanating from through to working in coordination and insert instead any relevant studies. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Would you just repeat your amendment again to make sure that we capture it correctly? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In decision 19.AA, we would suggest striking out the text after proposals emanating from through to working in coordination and insert any relevant studies instead, or any relevant studies.
Okay, thank you, UK. I think we have that, yes. And next on my list was Cameroon, to be followed by Mexico.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Le Cameroun prend la parole pour la première fois au cours de cette assemblée de la 19e session de la conférence des partis. Il joint sa parole à celle des autres délégations présentes pour féliciter le gouvernement du Panama pour l'organisation et la tenue de cette session. Aussi, nous vous félicitons pour votre désignation à la présidence des travaux de ce comité. Nous ne doutons pas un seul instant que vous allez conduire ces travaux à bon escient. Maintenant, c'est également l'occasion d'encourager les collègues de la CEDEAO pour le travail qu'ils ont fourni. Néanmoins, nous avons quelques préoccupations par rapport à cette proposition et nous voulons bien savoir, après les collègues de la CEDEAO, est-ce qu'il ne s'agit pas d'un transfert de responsabilité? Est-ce qu'à leur niveau, ils ont épuisé les législations nationales pour nous rassurer et nous dire officiellement que les législations nationales ont connu un échec et que c'est pour cette raison qu'il faut solliciter une régulation internationale? Nous n'avons pas encore ces éléments et nous pensons que cette proposition devrait encore être beaucoup creusée afin que nous soyons beaucoup plus précis encore et qu'il nous donne des informations concrètes pour que nous puissions prendre position. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Cameroon. I will give the floor to Mexico, followed by Indonesia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente, y también permítame felicitarlo por su designación como presidente de este comité, con nuestros mejores deseos para estos días. Sobre este documento, vemos que el tipo de análisis que se proponen podrían resultar confusos, pues no todas las especies en riesgo presentan comercio internacional, como lo mencionó Perú, y por tanto no todas ameritan incluirse en los apéndices de las CITES. En la sección de búsqueda avanzada de la página de la lista roja de la UICN, se puede filtrar para ver las especies en las categorías de peligro crítico. Según la búsqueda realizada en agosto pasado, hay 44.531 especies en las diferentes categorías de riesgo, y al hacer clic sobre la especie de interés hay una sección de datos externos que está ligada a la base de datos de especies PLUS de las CITES y muestra la información sobre su presencia o ausencia en los apéndices. Aunque el documento aclara que la base, su mantenimiento y demás actividades pueden realizarse sin financiamiento adicional, la carga de trabajo para la Secretaría y los comités científicos aumentaría significativamente y consideramos que se estarían duplicando esfuerzos con la UICN. En cuanto a las propuestas de decisión, hay que tomar en cuenta que la resolución CONF 18.2 sobre el establecimiento de los comités ya considera que, bajo solicitud de las partes, los comités científicos provean asesoría con respecto a los aspectos científicos, técnicos o nomenclaturales de las propuestas de enmienda, por lo que sería redundante solicitarlo en una decisión a los comités o establecer un grupo de trabajo del comité permanente para ello. Además de que la interpretación simultánea también podría resultar costosa y no se acostumbra para reuniones de los grupos de trabajo. Por ello, no estamos de acuerdo con la propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mexico. Next speaker on my list is Indonesia, to be followed by China and then Kenya. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for your giving the floor to Indonesia. First of all, we would like to congratulate you for your election in this committee. Regarding the proposal Doc 83, Indonesia is in the position in line with the comment of the Secretariat, which is not adopt this draft resolution and decisions, highlighting the concern that the criteria for amendment of Appendices 1 and 2 are not similar as criteria applied by the IUCN and in its red list. Moreover, the different member between IUCN and CITES can cause potential disputes in the future management conservation of the species. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. I now pass the floor to China. They will be followed by Kenya. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Since this is the first time that China is taking the floor of the Committee 1, and we congratulate you on your leadership of the agenda of Committee 1 as Chair. And China shared the concerns about the global biodiversity loss, and China thanks the proponents of Document 83 for raising and expressing the need for technical assistance. In recent years, a number of capacity building projects have been undertaken by multi-stakeholders, and those parties have collaborated and jointly submitted the proposals to amend the processes concerning the listing of species on appendices of CITES. There will be more related events in the future, and we trust that the parties had heard the voice of the co-proponents and would provide more support to the region. The draft resolution and decisions of Document 83 seek to launch an alternative process, which China finds questionable. The first 3 paragraphs of the Secretary's comments on the document clearly identify the issues of the proposed process. The criteria for amendment of Appendix 1 and 2 set out in the resolution COP 9.24 differed from the criteria for categories of the IUCN Red List of threatened species. In working procedure, categories and indicators, and even the nomenclature reference of the species, forcing linkages between 2 sets of criteria will be an overwhelming effort. And dear Chair, we support the view of the Secretariat, EU, Mexico, Indonesia, that the draft resolution and decisions or amended by the UK should not be adopted by the Conference of Parties. Thank you.
Thank you, China. I now give the floor to Kenya, followed by Colombia. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, and it's the first time Kenya is taking the floor in the committee. We want to congratulate you on your appointment and also thank the government and people of Panama for the hospitality so far offered to us as delegates. Chairman, Kenya will want to support this proposal, the document 89 in identifying species at risk of extinction for CITES parties submitted by Gambia, Liberia, Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal. Chair, information on IUCN threatened species and their status under CITES is important to parties considering proposals to amend the appendixes. However, it is important to clarify that only CITES parties can file listing proposals, and only the COP can make the determination on whether a species meets the biological and trade criteria. Chair, this proposal is in line with Article 2.1 of the CITES Treaty that, for example, Appendix 1 shall include all species threatened with extinction, which are or may be affected by trade. Chair, the proponents are proposing capacity development to be provided to parties. And I think that doesn't contradict the technical listing criteria. We know the information normally is availed, But when it comes to drafting listing proposals, it's always a challenge. So we want to support the resolutions and draft decisions in this document. And if the working group of the Standing Committee is so established, Kenya will want to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. The next speaker on my list was Colombia, followed by Japan, then the United States. So, Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Por ser la primera vez que Colombia toma la palabra en el Comité 1, quiere agradecer al Gobierno de Panamá nuevamente por acoger la conferencia de las partes y felicitarlo a usted por el nombramiento para conducir este comité y desearle lo mejor en el proceso. Colombia agradece el documento elaborado y queremos resaltar la importancia de los insumos que provienen de las listas rojas de la UICN que están disponibles en línea. Sin embargo, consideramos que las evaluaciones de estas listas rojas complementan, pero no tienen como único objetivo identificar temas de tráfico de especies, pues incluyen otro tipo de amenazas. Por esta razón, Colombia no estamos de acuerdo con el documento. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Colombia, and thank you also for your brevity. The next speaker on my list is Japan, followed by the United States, and then Zimbabwe. So, Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, since this is the first time to take the floor for Japan, we would like to show our appreciation to the amazing host country, Panama, and we congratulate your appointment as the chair of Committee 1. To be concise, we are in the same position of the Secretariat comment and the previous stated by EU. Moreover, IUCN assessment not always reflects sufficient information which other expertise organizations differently assessed. For example, some species are only assessed at whole species and not assessed in the population level. So we don't support this proposal, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I now give the floor to the United States, to be followed by Zimbabwe. US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States is gravely concerned by the global extinction crisis of flora and fauna and supports tools that assist countries in evaluating and addressing the threats species face. And we understand the proponents' concern bringing forward this document. However, we do not support the need for a proposed resolution at this time, but we can align ourselves with the views expressed by the UK that there would be some merit to have some decisions that would look at how we can better interface the threats that IUCN has identified for species and trade with the information provided, and would support some type of decision that would have the Animals and Plants Committee look at how we can make this tool, basically seeing it as a tool to help parties in their decision-making on proposals. We do note that IUCN has different criteria than CITES for their rankings, and it should not be conflated with the CITES criteria in Resolution COP 9.24. But a database could provide useful information, and perhaps it might be worth this committee speaking to IUCN to see how we could help facilitate the work that the proponents have asked, because there is some merit to the concerns that we've heard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, United States. So the next speaker on my list is Zimbabwe, and they will be followed by Switzerland, then Israel. I know there's a couple of parties here, Benin and Niger, who've already spoken, if I recall correctly, and so I'm giving other parties the opportunity to speak first. But of course, I will come back to the proponents later on to reflect on the comments made. So, yes, I was about to give Zimbabwe the floor, so you have the floor now.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time that Zimbabwe is taking the floor in this committee, would want to congratulate your election to chair this Committee 1. And would also want to thank the warm welcome from the people of Panama and Panama. Zimbabwe is not in support of proposal CoP19, document 83, as submitted by the Gambia, Liberia, Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal. We believe, yes, it could be important to raise the issue on identification of species at risk of extinction for CITES parties. We believe that there are other provisions, for example, under the IUCN, that caters for this. Zimbabwe concurs with the comments by the CITES Secretariat. We believe that there is no need for any additional resolutions and decisions on this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I will now give the floor to Switzerland, followed by Israel, then Uganda. So, Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. First, I would like to congratulate you on your election. I'm sure you will manage this work pretty well, or very well, and keep us on track. I would also like to thank Panama for hosting this meeting, for the Secretariat for preparing the meeting, and we are looking forward for two lively debates. On this matter, we would like to align ourselves with EU, Mexico, Indonesia. We do not think that we should support this document and the resolution and decision therein. We are of the view that the arguments put forward by the Secretariat are the ones we should follow. There is enough technical support for parties who wish to propose species for putting in the appendices. And the use of the IUCN Red List assessments, it is an additional factor that we can always weigh in when we talk about proposals. And for instance, just a practical example, a couple of years ago we had a topic on Asian snakes. In the end, we used the Red List assessment of IUCN to propose or to suggest a range of species which might merit inclusion in the appendices, but so far none has been included in the appendices. So it's always up to the parties themselves to decide whether they want to put a species in the appendix or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. I now give the floor to Israel, then Uganda.
Thank you, Chair. As for us too, this is the first time we're addressing this committee. We would like to congratulate you on your role and wish you a great deal of success in carrying out this important task. We would like to align ourselves with the comments by UK and the United States that speak generally in favor of the concepts that are expressed in this document. We certainly see the merit in a lot of what has been proposed, but at the same time, we think that it's premature to invest a lot of money in setting up this database, and we would like to rescue the positive aspects of this proposal without totally rejecting it as was proposed by some of the previous speakers. So we would encourage very much some sort of resolution or some sort of decision here directed to the Secretariat to liaise with IUCN to find ways to incorporate the IUCN Red List more, make it more readily available to the parties and the information in it in a way that can help the parties to use the information in preparing listing proposals. We see that there's a lot of need for this and there's a lot of merit in what's being proposed, but maintaining a full database as proposed in the document is premature, and we would like to rescue the positive aspects without sounding too negative. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Israel. Now give the floor to Uganda.
Thank you, Chair. Would like to join the rest of the parties that have extended appreciation to the government of Panama for the warm welcome and the organization. Would like also to, since it's our first time as Uganda to speak, would like to congratulate you for the appointment as our chair. We know you've led us, driven us safely before, and we know you'll continue to do so. So we congratulate and thank you. Regarding this proposal, would like to align ourselves to a submission by a couple of parties and especially Kenya and Israel, that the proposal has very important and positive aspects, especially with regards to capacity building for parties to be able, one, to generate and consolidate data that should be able to inform drafting of proposals for consideration. So a bit of arrangement and mechanism for building capacity internally to be able to generate this data. But the other aspect is that we've seen over time that some proposals that are submitted do not meet the biological criteria for listing species. And that takes us some time as parties to review and disagree and vote. So this kind of request and arrangement that is being proposed by the Liberia, Senegal, Nigeria, and Niger, plus Gambia, I think it would be important for us to arrive at a decision or a recommendation that can help us support those parties that have the desire to list selected species. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. We've still got more requests for the floor, and we've had a very long debate on this. I'm going to close the list to parties now, but Rwanda did have their flag up before I've done that, so I'm going to go to Rwanda. But I recognize also that I now have 3 parties pressing the floor for a second intervention, and I'll maybe come back to that in a moment. But Rwanda, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Rwanda is taking the floor for the first time, and I want to thank the government of Panama, CITES Secretariat, for organizing this conference, but also congratulate you, Chair, for upon your nomination. Rwanda wants to align itself with comments by Uganda, Israel, regarding this document 83. We feel it's actually, we wanted to give a precision reflect on what actually the pandemic that we just actually came out, that compels us to think differently as CITES. What kind of difference are we looking at in this conference that is happening after the pandemic? That we need to bring out more, to support proposals that brings out differences, different how we've been working, looking at what presses more than we've thought before. I think Israel touches it, funding issue. Funding has been an issue when you look at actually what this tells us after the pandemic. So we wouldn't want to go into proposals that actually makes us spend much more than what we would be looking at to save. At the opening of this conference, we were told actually to look at what benefits our communities. I'm commenting for this proposal. It's a good one, but probably not at this time, but also reflecting on the area proposals that were talked about yesterday. I think we need to look at what makes us more benefit more than just wasting resources, but also we would expect a difference in the way of working in a CITES as parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Rwanda. We've had quite a considerable debate on this, and I do want to give observers the opportunity to make some comments. And I do see the request for the floor from Three parties already mentioned that have spoken already. I'm trying to come back certainly to the proponents before I kind of try to bring this to a conclusion. But if the parties concerned will indulge me, I would like to give the floor to, or to open the floor to observers for any comments they might wish to make. So I see a request from UNEP WCMC. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. UNEP WCMC would like to warmly congratulate you on your election as Chair of Committee 1 and express our thanks to the Government of Panama for hosting the meeting. This is an intervention on behalf of UNEP WCMC, IUCN and the Zoological Society of London. We share the concerns outlined in Document 83 around the biodiversity crisis and the role that overexploitation, including for international trade, plays in this. It is for this reason that we collaborated with colleagues at the University of Oxford, ZSL and others to develop a new mechanism for identifying species that are globally threatened on the IUCN Red List and are likely to be at risk from international trade. The preliminary findings identified 904 non-CITES species that fit into this category. The preprint for this work has been submitted for publication as an information document, and there will be a side event on Wednesday evening which will include further details on the methods and results of this analysis. We believe this approach could provide a useful model for the mechanism that the 5 West African parties are requesting in Document 83. The analysis could be run between each COP to help support decision-making within the Convention, and the outcomes could be reviewed by the Animals and Plants Committees. UNEP WCMC is keen to support parties to establish evidence-based approaches, and we stand ready to provide further support in this area together with IUCN and other partners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UNEP WCMC. I have one other observer requesting the floor, which is Gem Bleu and also IUCN. So I'll take Gem Bleu, if I pronounce that correctly, IWMC, and then that's it. I'm closing the list for further interventions. So, Gem Bleu, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de m'avoir accordé la parole. C'est pour la première fois que je parle au nom de Jean Bleu Agrobiotech, une faculté agronomique de l'Université de Liège en Belgique. J'aimerais tout d'abord vous féliciter pour votre élection et vous souhaiter plein succès dans les travaux de ce comité 1. J'aimerais aussi remercier les autorités du Panama pour l'accueil et l'organisation de cette réunion, remercier le secrétariat de la CITES et tous les pays représentés pour notre admission comme observateur. Et enfin, j'aimerais dire un grand merci à la Belgique qui a soutenu en nous donnant l'accréditation accordée afin que Jean Bleu puisse participer à cette 19e conférence des parties de la CITES. J'aimerais tout d'abord rappeler que les critères de la liste rouge de l'UCN sont des critères robustes et pourront permettre ou bien pourront aider à réglementer le commerce de certaines espèces. Toutefois, nous constatons que dans cette liste rouge de certaines espèces, des données scientifiques sont manquantes et c'est dans ce cadre que Jean Bleu Agrobiotech et ses partenaires travaillent depuis plus de 40 ans dans les forêts tropicales d'Afrique centrale et a mis en place actuellement un projet sur la réactualisation des statuts de conservation de certaines espèces d'arbres exploités en Afrique. Il y a plusieurs espèces qui sont bien ayant des statuts de conservation sur la liste UCN, mais ces statuts remontent à plus de 20 ans. Actuellement, avec le réseau d'INAFAC, c'est un réseau qui plaide pour la gestion durable des forêts d'Afrique centrale, qui regroupe les pays d'Afrique centrale, les administrations forestières, les entreprises privées, les universités d'Afrique centrale, les instituts de recherche, les ONG. Dans ce réseau d'INAFAC, il y a l'installation des parcelles permanentes qui permettent de faire le suivi.
Jean Bleu,
Oui.
sorry to interrupt you, but you've now been speaking for over 3 minutes and we're running short of time. So can you bring your comments to a conclusion, especially if you've got anything specific to say on the draft resolution or decisions? So conclude very quickly, please, so that we can bring this debate to a way forward.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ainsi, tout ceci nous montre qu'un groupe de travail qui regrouperait les scientifiques et les partis serait beaucoup plus judicieux pour actualiser et pour permettre de mieux réglementer le commerce des espèces à travers la CITES. Donc, Jean Blou Agrobiotech aimerait bien partager les données scientifiques avec toutes ces parties pour une meilleure conservation de nos espèces. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Jean Bleu. And I had IUCN IWMC, requesting the floor. So you have the floor, but yes, I would appreciate brevity if you were able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm talking on behalf of several pro-sustainable use organizations, the list of which will be provided to the Secretariat after my comments. First of all, thank you, Chair, for your, congratulations, Chair, for your election. Thank you, Panama, for your invitation. The document that we're looking at, document 83, is composed of all of the possible ingredients, create a new structure of decisions with respect to the listing or delisting of species on CITES appendices. This document is as weak as the arguments we've heard in its favor. Arguments given for considering mechanisms that are already in place, that have been in place for many years. So I will simply support the statement made by several speakers in saying that this document shall be rejected outright without even consideration for a possible decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IWMC. So if you just give me a brief moment. So thank you, colleagues. We've had a lot of interventions on this subject. It's raised quite a number of points. There is clearly no consensus on a way forward, though several options have been proposed, but clearly there is a demand for support and information, perhaps especially in the West Africa region. I have 4 parties requesting the floor. India, you came in after I closed the list, so with regret, I'm not going to offer you the floor at this time. I hope you can understand that. Thank you. And all the parties have already spoken. I want to go back to the proponents. One of the proponents to give their reflections on what they've heard and what they feel would be a way forward. And when you've had the opportunity to do that, then I will kind of suggest the best way forward myself, or what I take as the best way forward from the views expressed in this committee. So I have both Niger and Senegal. I don't know which one of you as proponents wants to speak, but Niger is at the front of my list, so I will come to you if that is okay with your co-proponents. So Niger, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, nous notons que plusieurs des partis se sont exprimés pour indiquer un besoin urgent de soutien technique pour la préparation des propositions d'inscription. Nous souhaitons donc la création d'un groupe de travail pour définir une méthode pour soutenir les États dans la préparation des propositions d'inscription. Monsieur le Président, nous notons aussi que l'objectif est de créer une base de données qui met en évidence les espèces menacées d'extinction qui se sont ou peuvent être effacées par le commerce, mais qui ne se sont pas inscrits ou couvertes par la CITES. Cela ne serait pas redondant, il faut le souligner, et le document ne propose pas d'amender les critères d'inscription à la CITES et à la résolution 924, ceci resterait identique. Nous soutenons la proposition du Royaume-Uni et des États-Unis et suggérons un groupe de travail pour clarifier ce point et d'autres soulevés. Nous nous proposons de travailler avec les États-Unis et le Royaume-Uni en formant un groupe de rédaction pour incorporer leurs propositions dans la décision amendée que nous soumettrons à votre adoption. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Niger. And I'm now not taking any more interventions. I'll just have a brief discussion with my colleagues here and then come back to you with a suggested way forward. One moment. So thank you, colleagues, and thank you from the summing up or your reflections, Niger, on the a possible way forward. I'm not going to create a working group, a formal working group of this committee. There is clearly quite a lot of division on the way forward. So what I'm going to suggest is essentially what you suggested yourselves. I'm going to suggest that you, the proponents, collaborate informally with the United States and the United Kingdom and see if you can come up with a refined set of decisions that perhaps help meet the aspirations of the region in particular for support and guidance, taking into account the other sources of information that we've heard about and are available or are available, and invite you then to come back with some refined draft decisions for our later consideration. So that is what I propose, and we would then adjourn further discussion on this item until a later date. So if parties are content with that as a way forward, I will leave that in your hands to discuss informally and try and come back with something more refined. Please keep me and the Secretariat updated on progress, and I will look for a slot in the agenda further ahead when we might come back to this item. So if there are no objections to that as a way forward, and I don't see any requests from the floor, then for now we consider this item adjourned, and we will, European Union, you request the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, the voting system didn't let me raise the flag earlier. Well, we are content with the way forward you propose, and that a group of colleagues should look into drafting suggestions presented by the UK and supported by the US. We are just concerned that there was a diversity of opinions presented in the discussion today, and it might be beneficial to expand the drafting group with different opinions, so the EU would be interested to take part in that group to ensure that the outcome can be then supported by as many parties as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, European Union. I'm not creating a drafting group. I'm not creating a formal group of this committee. I'm suggesting to the proponents and a few other countries that they go away and try and come up with something. I hope that they take the opportunity to consult with the range of opinions that expressed by parties, or they consult with a range of parties that have expressed varying opinions on this document and see if they can find some way forward. So I very much hope that the proponents have heard the request from the EU to be involved, and that can be accommodated. But for now, I see that as the best way forward to try and give an opportunity to find something that might work for everybody. It might not. We'll determine that when we come back to this agenda item at a future date. So with that, I'll now move on to our next document, which is document 87.2. It's on aquatic species listed in the CITES appendices, proposals for a new approach to the listing of sharks and rays. The proponent is Senegal, and Senegal, I invite you to introduce your proposal, and perhaps you might also want, while you're doing that, to look at the comments and reflect on the comments made by the Secretariat, who were not supportive of the amendment. They weren't aware of difficulties with the current approach, which has, adopted by consensus after many years of detailed work in the past, and perhaps the suggestions are going to create more uncertainty than certainty on the way forward. So perhaps you might want to reflect on those comments as you make your introduction, but Senegal, you now have the floor. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le document 87.2 suggère que les parties considèrent la manière dont elles ont abordé jusqu'à présent les espèces aquatiques à la CITES et que celles-ci reviennent à l'intention initiale de la Convention et aux critères d'inscription à la CITES lorsqu'elles envisagent l'inscription d'espèces marines vulnérables telles que les requins et les raies. Monsieur le Président, le document fournit des informations supplémentaires sur la question et les amendements potentiels à la résolution CONF 9-24, REV COP17. Dans la note de page sur les espèces aquatiques qui, selon nous, devraient être examinées à la COP19 de la CITES et au-delà, avec un examen plus approfondi de cette question au niveau du comité CITES au cours des 3 prochaines années. Encore une fois, ici à la COP19 de la CITES, nous constatons qu'il existe une grande divergence d'opinion concernant l'inscription des espèces de requins et de raies, avec plus de 40 parties, dont nous-mêmes, soutenant des propositions d'inscription supplémentaires de requins. Nous notons que le secrétariat de la CITES et l'UICN recommandent l'adoption de ces propositions. Cependant, la FAO estime que ces mêmes propositions ne répondent que partiellement aux critères en raison de leur interprétation de la résolution CONF 9.24. Monsieur le Président, comme c'est indiqué dans ce document, il s'agit d'un problème persistant qui, selon nous, provient d'un manque de reconnaissance par certaines parties et d'autres organismes que toutes les espèces marines ne relèvent pas d'une gamme biologique étroite. Par conséquent, les définitions actuellement incluses dans la note de bas de page sur les espèces aquatiques de la résolution CONF 9.24 ne sont pas universellement applicables aux espèces marines et donnent lieu à des recommandations contradictoires. En effet, certains, comme les requins, sont tout aussi vulnérables que les espèces terrestres et devraient être traités comme tels lors de la prise de décision sur les propositions d'inscription à la CITES. Ce document propose une façon potentielle d'aller de l'avant pour traiter ce problème persistant et éviter toute mauvaise interprétation de ce que nous considérons comme la véritable intention de la résolution CONF 9.24 pour certaines espèces aquatiques. Le secrétaire de la CITES note dans son analyse de ce document qu'au cours des discussions précédentes, lorsque la résolution CONF 9.24 a été négociée en 2004, il n'avait pas connaissance de préoccupations importantes soulevées par les parties concernant l'adéquation fondamentale des critères en termes de biologie des requins. C'était peut-être le cas, c'est peut-être le cas, mais ce document analyse les 20 dernières années d'inscription de requins et de raies, le discours politique qu'il y a autour de ces inscriptions, l'augmentation significative des connaissances et des informations scientifiques concernant la biologie des requins et des raies, pour montrer que ce manque de préoccupation spécifique était juste un oubli. Monsieur le Président, nous pensons que ce document devrait marquer le début d'un processus visant à résoudre ce problème. Les propositions largement soutenues concernant les requins, sur la table pour la COP19 sont pleinement justifiées sur le plan scientifique et devraient être adoptées. Cependant, alors que ces progrès importants ont lieu, nous devrions envisager à nouveau de clarifier les éléments de la résolution CONF 9.24 sur les espèces aquatiques. C'est une préoccupation importante pour les requins, qui sont maintenant, Monsieur le Président et chers collègues, le deuxième groupe de vertébrés le plus menacé de la planète. Je répète, les requins et les raies sont maintenant le deuxième groupe de vertébrés le plus menacé de la planète. Cependant, il peut être également nécessaire d'inclure des considérations pour d'autres espèces marines, au-delà des espèces de requins et de raies. C'est ainsi que, Monsieur le Président, nous avons préparé des projets de décision qui peuvent soutenir une voie à suivre, the way forward, sur cette question. Et nous suggérons que la discussion de ces décisions se poursuive au sein d'un groupe de travail à la COP19. Nous espérons que cela permettra à la discussion sur cette question importante de se poursuivre au-delà de cette COP et que ce processus trouvera des solutions qui permettront des révisions raffinées et scientifiquement informées de la résolution COP 9.24. Monsieur le Président, nous avons préparé des projets de décision. Je ne sais pas si je dois les lire maintenant ou si je dois attendre un peu plus tard. J'attends votre avis sur cette question. Je peux les lire maintenant?
Yes, please, Senegal, without knowing what's in your decisions, then parties can't form a view on them. So, yes, please read them out now and do it slowly, please, so that we can capture them correctly. Thank you.
Very much. Ce sera très court. Ça marche. Donc, le projet de décision, il y a d'abord une décision adressée au secrétariat. Sous réserve d'un financement externe, le secrétariat convoque un atelier technique pour examiner la différence biologique entre ces espèces de la classe des chondrichthiens et d'autres espèces marines hautement vulnérables et d'autres espèces marines couramment exploitées commercialement et d'envisager de développer davantage les amendements proposés à la CONF 9.24.
Senegal, could you go more slowly, please, to make sure that we're writing down? Just speak very slowly. Thank you.
Je vais reprendre, je vais aller plus lentement. Bon. Voilà, donc c'est la résolution, la décision adressée au secrétariat. Sous réserve d'un financement externe, le secrétariat convoque un atelier technique pour examiner la différence biologique entre ces espèces de la classe des chondrichthiens et d'autres espèces marines hautement vulnérables et d'autres espèces marines couramment exploitées commercialement, et d'envisager de développer davantage les amendements proposés à la CONF 9.24, rêve COP17, détaillés dans la section 6 du document COP19, DOC 87.2, afin de s'assurer qu'il reflète correctement l'intention du texte de la Convention pour la classe des chondrichthiens. Petit b, le secrétariat publie une notification invitant toutes les parties intéressées, le Comité pour les animaux, l'Organisation des Nations Unies pour l'alimentation et l'agriculture et d'autres organisations intergouvernementales et non gouvernementales à participer à cet atelier. Petit c, les conclusions et les recommandations de cet atelier au Comité pour les animaux lors de la prochaine réunion pour examen seront soumis au secrétariat. Décision maintenant adressée au Comité pour les animaux. Il y a une seule décision. Le Comité pour les animaux examine le rapport de l'atelier et fait des recommandations à la prochaine session du Comité permanent, le cas échéant. Décision adressée au Comité permanent. Le Comité permanent examine le rapport de l'atelier et les recommandations et commentaires du Comité pour les animaux et fait des recommandations à la 20e session de la conférence des parties. Et enfin, décision adressée aux parties et autres. Les parties, les organisations intergouvernementales, les organisations non gouvernementales et les autres donateurs sont encouragés à fournir un financement au secrétariat pour la mise en œuvre de la décision. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, thank you, Senegal. And we've captured those decisions, but it'd be quite useful if you could give us a copy of lunchtime just to make sure we've got it precisely correct. My understanding is that the original proposal you made in document 87.2 is now superseded by these draft decisions. And so what we suggest now is that perhaps we break for lunch. It'll give parties time to consider the draft decisions, and we will resume debate on this topic immediately after lunch when we resume at 2 p.m. So I will go to the Secretariat to see if they've got any logistical announcements before I close this session. But I do encourage you, I know we made a late start this morning. We've got a lot to get through, so and we're already a kind of an agenda item or so behind. So please come back here early, certainly promptly, so that we can start on the dot. I've got a request from the floor from Gabon. Is this related to, because I'm sort of closing the, all right, thank you, Gabon, right. So before I close this session, I will go to Secretariat for any announcements.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have got a few announcements. First of all, we would draw your attention to the COVID
preventative measures, and they're available on the CITES website on the CoP19 page. Please have a look at them and familiarize yourself with them, particularly if you're not feeling well. Regarding lost and found items, they can be either lost or deposited if you find them at the information desk by the entrance to the conference center. The Bureau this morning looked at the question of the queues for lunches, and we draw your attention to the fact that you may pay at all the locations in the conference center. You may pay in the morning, so you can pick up your meal straight away at lunchtime, and this should reduce the queuing time. So please bear that in mind. That will help everybody to get fed at lunchtime. A further reminder, please don't leave your cards inside the units in front of your microphones. Please take your cards with you when you leave this room. We also ask you not to move the nameplates around to go and sit beside your colleagues, because all the microphones are attached to a particular spot and a particular nameplate. So if you move, we won't be able to find you. So please leave your nameplates where they were. And finally, a request to side event organizers. We would ask you not to move the furniture or the equipment in the rooms, please. Leave it as you found it. Thank you very much for your cooperation on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So we now close this session. I hope you go and manage to get some lunch. Thank you very much for your cooperation, and we'll see you at 2 p.m. Thank you.